majority of people we speak to, 9 out of 10 people do have children. You know, they're here for their children as well. And thank you. And also, it's one thing that really, we don't really see a lot of education plans being done, whether it's missed off the fact find or whether it's people don't really understand how to approach clients or speak to clients about it. But the majority of times, you know, saving for education, what you'll find, especially when you've got clients over here, is clients will get to a certain age, and once their kids have gone to university, then they'll choose to leave the Middle East or leave this region and go somewhere else. So, you know, trying to get it into someone from day one when you see them, yes, we can help with retirement planning, pension planning, life insurance, but education planning, as you'll soon find out if you've got children over here, isn't cheap, and it only goes one way. You know, this is just one piece of, you know, equipment that I use when I go out to see clients, even if I know, you know, if I'm talking about education planning and things like that, because it's okay me saying to a client, like, you need to save X amount per month to try and get your son, daughter, you know, to higher, you know, senior education, but it's actually putting it in front of them and showing them that, you know, 9 times out of 10, most people think that it's just the cost of education they've got to pay for. They forget that obviously while they're here, they're living with their parents are feeding them, their parents are clothing them, their parents are doing pretty much everything for them. But once obviously the child turns 18 and goes to university, it's very rare that, you know, a child will go to university in the Middle East after living in the Middle East. They may, but the majority of people will end up going back to their home country, or they might go to the States, they could go to the UK, they could go to Europe. So costs there obviously are a lot more expensive, from not just the tuition fees, but also the cost of living and things like that as well. So obviously, starting from the beginning, it will all start, you know, and finding out, obviously, when you actually go through a fact find. Now, obviously, the fact find is probably the most important part of any first meeting, because it lets us know where the client is now, where they want to be in the future, and also as we're going through there, it indicates areas like education planning that we can potentially help clients with. And that's why, you know, when you look at the area here, when it talks about obviously dependents, one, you know, this is set up mainly for us, obviously, to try and help them understand what we can actually help them with. And the main question I'll always say to clients is, you know, at the moment, do you have sufficient savings in place for children's education? Not just to pay their school fees now while they're, you know, under 18, but have you started to think about what you're actually going to put aside every month, you know, besides your savings for your pension, for your retirement, for your life insurance, things like that, that's actually going to not, you know, allow you not to dip into them sort of things when your child does get to 18. And pretty much 100% of people you speak to will not be saving for their children's education. Yes, they may be saving into a regular savings plan already for their retirement, or saving for a house, or saving for X, Y, and Z. But usually the common answer you get when you say, okay, what have you put in place? It will be, I haven't put anything in place. You know, and for us as advisors, you know, regardless of whether the client's going to stay here for 2 years, 5 years, for the rest of their life, it's just about, you know, making something and just setting that picture to them. Say, okay, well, do you think it might be worth, you know, putting something away for little Johnny, let's just say, over the next X amount of years, so that when he does get to university age, you're not having to worry about, oh, have I got to take that out of my savings, or have I got to use money that I didn't even, you know, think I was going to use for that, for education planning. Now, like I said, this is quite a key program, because on here, you know, you'll see on table 1, it talks about the average tuition fees for last year in the US. Now, I think it's a bit steep, because I run my figures usually around each child, when they come to the age of 18, will need about $50,000 a year in today's terms. So over a 4-year course, each child will need around $200,000. So obviously that's not including inflation, which we'll go on to in a minute when I show you how I calculate it and things like that. But it's just painting that picture. Because when you sit down with someone and show them this, you go, well, look, you know, your child might not go to the US, but as an average, you know, as a rule of thumb, tuition fees are around $39,400 per annum for a normal course. Then you've got to think, obviously, if your child's not living with you, have you got accommodation where they're going to be staying? If not, are you going to have to rent an accommodation for them? You know, do you want your child to take a part-time job while they're trying to study for a degree? Probably not. So, you know, that's also going to have to be paid by you. As well as obviously, you know, books and, you know, other supplies, other expenses, like are they travelling to university campus, are they staying on campus and things like that. So it's just all different things you've got to incorporate, you know, and again, you know, you'll get that information through going through the fact find. And again, once you get their assets, liabilities and income, you'll be able to see what their disposable income is and just see, you know, what things you're going to look at as well. But the bottom line is everyone should have by now, or if you haven't, you can ask your managers for, the best tool that you should have in your bag, not just for education planning, but for obviously retirement planning and anything else where you're going to want to try and see what money they're going to need in today's terms, projected with inflation in X amount of years' time, okay? So the easiest way for obviously to show this, let's just say from a dummy fact find point of view, we meet client 1, and client 1's got 2 children. Let's just say they've got John, who's 2, and they've got, let's just say Sophie, who's 6, okay? So realistically, you know, they should already be thinking about, okay, what are we going to do for, you know, senior education and things like that. Now, we all know that children or young adults start university at 18, and potentially, like I said, it can go to a 4-year course. That's usually the minimum that most children and most universities courses are, for 4 years. So we need to make sure that when we're speaking to them, we explain to them it's okay, you know, having money there, but whatever you've got saved up by the time they're 18, it's got to last them for 4 years, okay? Now, the easiest way to do that, Mr. Client, is instead of waiting until the last minute, is to start saving as soon as possible. Because the sooner someone saves for retirement, A, the less they've got to save on a monthly basis, but B, it's got more time to be invested and grow over this period from here to here. So realistically, you know, we've got 16 years until John potentially is going to go to university, and then we've got 12 years potentially until Sophie's going to go to university. So as I'll say, as I usually say to clients, you know, on a rule of thumb, now it could be more, it could be less, but I always work, Mr. Client, on the average person, the average course is around $50,000 per annum in today's terms. Now, just like anything else, school fees only go one way. And for anyone who's got kids already over here, I always ask the question, just out of interest, since Sophie's been at school, have the school fees gone up every year? Yes. They usually go up by about 2,000 to 3,000 dirhams a year for anyone who's got children. So lo and behold, you know, by the time Sophie gets to 18 or John gets to 18, you know, you can expect that it's probably going to be more than $50,000 per year, Mr. Client. Yeah, it probably is. Okay. So my job, Mr. Client, is to work out what it's going to cost for John and Sophie, or what you're going to need in the pot for John and Sophie to be able to go to university at 18. So if we just use a rule of thumb that each child is going to be $50,000 per annum, and it's going to be a 4-year course, realistically, Mr. Client, you're going to need $200,000 for John to go to university today, and $200,000 for Sophie to go to university today. So at the moment, Mr. Client, if we're looking through the fact find, do you think you've got $400,000 today to be able to put them through university? And I like the yes and no questions with clients, because it's sort of to the point. You know, it's a case of they'll either tell you, you know full well through going through the fact find whether they've got that, but just by asking that question, they know they're going to say, well, no, I haven't. Okay, well, let's just do some simple math, Mr. Client. I go, okay, you haven't got that now, but let's work out what you're going to need in X amount of years' time. Now, and this is when I'd pull this out. So I go, you know, it's a rule of thumb, Mr. Client, that schooling goes up by 5% per annum. Every year, school fees go up by around 5%. So if we work that in today's terms, you know, if we start with, let's say, John, okay, John's got 16 years until he's going to go to university, okay? So if we take the rule of thumb that he's going to need, you know, $200,000 basically in today's terms to be able to go to university, when we pull this out, this is what's called a compound interest table, Mr. Client. This just allows me to take that amount and times it by how many years they've got left to see what amount he's actually going to need as a lump sum when you do come to obviously retire. So the simple maths is, if we take the 200,000, we go down to obviously 16 years here, and over 5%, it's 2.18. So times 2.18, the actual amount that, you know, for John to go to university, okay, if we put this down here, is $436,000, okay? That's the amount with inflation that John's going to need to be able to go to university in 12 years' time. We do the same for Sophie as well. Now hers is going to be obviously a bit more because she's got a few more years, you know, until also she'll feel a little bit less because she's got less years to go until she gets to that time. So if we take $200,000 of them, times it by 1.79, that's $358,000 for Sophie. Okay, Now, from here, Mr. Client, our job is to say, okay, well, these look like two big numbers. And it usually scares clients when they say, well, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to get to that number. But the other reason, Mr. Client, is, this is why we look at this, Mr. Client. So, for example, how much would you need to save on a monthly basis for John and Sophie to be able to get them into further education? So again, if we work on John first, if we do $436,000, okay, and we divide that on the compound interest table by looking at getting anywhere between 6 to 8% growth per year over a 16-year period, so divided by 33,224, take away 1 times 100. Realistically, Mr. Client, for you to be saving at the moment, you need to be saving $1,212 per month. Every month for the next 16 years, and a 6 to 8% growth rate, that would get you the $436,000. Do you think you've got more chance of waiting to the last minute and trying to find that, or with the amount of disposable income we've worked out, do you think you could, if not afford this number, a number quite close to that? And 9 times out of 10, even if they can't afford to save $1,212, they may be able to start and say, okay, well, I could probably start around $900 a month, knowing full well that once they come on as a client, same as whether they've got a retirement plan or a pension or something like that, we're going to be sitting down with them every quarter. And like I say to clients, there's going to come a time, Mr. Client, where 1 year you do get a pay rise, or you change jobs and you do get a higher salary. And when we sit down every quarter, not only will we be looking to adjust the number you afford to pay in, but we'll look to try and get as close to this or above this as possible, so it helps you get to where you want to be. And the same as obviously Sophie as well. So if you take 358,000, again, we divide that by 12 years at 8% growth, which is 21,527, take away 1 times 100. That brings out a little bit more, because obviously she's got a shorter time. It's $1,563 per month. Now, usually, when they see that number, especially with both of them together, most people will not be able to afford $2,700 a month. It's impossible, especially if they're already saving for retirement, or they've got outgoings, or they're just a normal family of 4, let's just say. It's quite a lot to go. But what I've done here is not said, right, well, you need to save this. The whole goal of this is to make them open their mind and go, God, have I got more chance of achieving, because the longer you wait, Mr. Client, guess what? As you can see, between Sophie and John, by the difference of 4 years, it means you've got to save an extra $300 a month. We've worked out on the fact find, let's just say, you've got 10,000 dirham spare a month. Why don't we start by even saving half of this for both of them into into 2 policies over, 16 and 12 years, just to get you started and building that up as well. And it's like I said, the good thing about this is when you pull this out, it's not like you've just pulled a number out of thin air. And sometimes I usually turn this around and I get them to read the figures out to me so they can know. So literally I'll say, okay, brilliant. So at 8% growth, Mr. Client, at 12 years, what's the number? Oh, it's 27.2. Brilliant. And then I'll write it down. So they know full well that that's the amount with inflation, including obviously the increase in the education costs as well. The bottom line is, if they do want both of these to go to university at 18 and last them for 4 years as well, they need to be saving X amount per month. And I'll always ask a few different questions as well. So I say, are you the kind of parent that, when they go to university, are you going to want them to have a job? Are you going to want them to focus on their university plans? Most parents, as in 90% of parents, will say, well, no, I don't really want them getting a job. I want them to focus on their higher education and actually, getting a job. Brilliant. Okay, so they will need, obviously, maybe a bit of extra money that will incorporate into this to be able to get to there. Very rarely will someone go, no, it's down to them to pay for their education and things like that. And over the years, I've found most parents, if you actually meet a couple, especially when you sit down with a husband and wife, they're more interested in putting money in for education planning than they are for trying to do something themselves, because they want to make sure that their kids get the best education. And just by going through something like that, as well as you've got a chance of, instead of saying, okay, well, you need to save for your retirement as well, most people, when I get to the end of a fact find and we get to the priorities part, I say, okay, what's your main, we've gone through this now, we've gone through a few different calculations for retirement, education planning, what's your main priorities? And 9 times out of 10, if you've done this and you've gone through the education planning, they'll say, right, can we look at education first? Now, sometimes it's good, because then it makes you think, okay, brilliant, they're good, they want to do that then. And so many times when you sit down with people, like I said, it's all about them wanting to make sure that they put their children first as well. So many people in this job that I sit down with, when I go through, advising my team, look for the fact find, I go, they've got 3 kids, did you not speak about education? Oh no, he only wanted to speak about retirement. But just by adding this into your pitch, and like I said, I guarantee, the more first you do, and the more first you sit with people with children, and you actually show them this, you'll do more deals for education planning than you will do for regular savings plans. Because most people, when it comes to retirement, most people think the dream of Dubai is going to last forever, and they'll save it a couple. We'll do that in a couple of years' time. We'll do it in a couple of years' time. Education planning, they know it's on the forefront, because every year, Mr. Client, guess what? Every year your child gets older, you've got to save a little bit more. And there's going to come a time, Mr. Client, that in 16 years or 12 years' time, you might not be in this region. And if you haven't put something in place now, there's nothing stopping you to work. You want to retire at 55, you could work until 75 if you haven't got enough money. Guess what? When your children get to 18, they haven't got a choice to say, well, maybe we'll do university in 5 or 6 years' time. They're going to want to have the best university, or at least go to the best school. And by giving them choice, we'll give them a lot more, options in life on where to go as well. And, going back to obviously the priorities thing, you'll get more deals, whether it's education, whether it's life insurance, whether it's, retirement plan or things like that, if you've done more of the things in the fact find. Most clients, if you come back from a meeting and go, he only wanted to talk about life insurance, so I'll send him a life insurance quote and then I'll see if he wants to do it or not. If you come back and said, right, I've sent you some information on the life insurance, the education plan we spoke about for John and Sophie, the retirement plan, it's pretty hard for them to go, right, thanks for that, Dan, but I'm not interested in that. They'll always be, okay, Dan, I'm not really interested in that, but can we start with that? So like I said, when you go for a fact find, yes, education planning is key, but just trying to cover everything. And as you're doing this training, obviously, I can see obviously in the books, you've got training on different things. Just make sure you don't skip things in a fact find. Because like I said, different things, there might be one thing that you go into a meeting that the client's interested about, and as soon as you speak about something else, it opens up a whole different picture. And before you know it, the client's saying, actually, Dan, the whole point of this meeting was to talk about my pension in the UK, but yeah, I want to deal with that, but this is actually more of a concern to me, because while I've got the disposable income, I'd rather get this set up now than wait a couple more years. Brilliant. So you've come out of that meeting going in to talk about one thing, but opened up something else with a simple 5-minute conversation that potentially then, and it's a bit more personal as well. Because like I said, because you're always talking about, mentioning the son and daughter's name and things like that, by the time you get to the end, they're like, right, we need to make sure that John and Sophie are set up. And that's the first thing they talk about when you leave the meeting. Not about, well, he said we've got to save $2,000 a month if we retire at 55. Maybe we'll just wait 10 more years. We'll start it in 10 more years' time. So like I said, life insurance and education planning is probably the two main things that are not spoken about enough, but people physically need if they have children or they're getting older, basically. Where, there's always an excuse for retirement plans or savings plans where people go, well, now's not the right time. You never get someone asking you when you're selling an education plan, yeah, but is it a good time to get in the market at the moment? But retirement, they do. They go, oh, market's been bad this year. Maybe I'll wait till next year. Well, okay, well, you can start when you want. But with this, they're like, regardless, Mr. Klein, you need to start this now, because the longer you leave this, the less chance of John or Sophie or either of them being able to go to further education. And like I said, it's for you guys and girls, especially starting out, the one thing while we try and do these training sessions is just so you pick up good habits straight away. It's harder to do this for a consultant that's been here for 2 or 3 years, and they go, yeah, I know I should do that, Dan, but I've got into this routine now. I go through this part of the fact find, I skip that, I go to the back of the fact find. No, the fact find has been the same since I've been an advisor. And it's probably been the same before that for 20, 30 years. Yes, we've added a few more questions in, and there's been a few more policies that have been added over the years. But if you stick to this, it actually flows in a good motion. The education plan, you hit first. You disturb them first. So straight away they're thinking, oh God, we need to look at that. Then you go into obviously the assets, liabilities and income. So you can actually see, right, how much of this can they actually afford from their disposable income and actually maintain paying if they could do that. And then you go on to obviously if they've got any debt. Is there anything that's going to potentially stop them from doing this or another plan or something like that? Assets in the bank, lump sum. Have they got this figure in the bank? Again, you lean on that again. Well, you haven't got either of them in the bank, Oh yeah, I know. Short-term plan, okay, well that's fine. What have you got short-term planning? Then you go into that, and all of a sudden, before you know it, different things or different objections they could potentially have, like, well, I'll take money out of a property, or I've got £1 million in the bank, or things like that. They soon erode away from the back of their mind, and by the time you get to the end, they're thinking, God, how am I going to be able to afford that? So I better start something now. And it's just simple things like that. When people go out, if you haven't got one of these in your bag or you don't have one of these, let me know and I'll speak to your manager to get one printed out. But this is the biggest tool when you're doing education planning, retirement planning, because it puts into real terms, a lot of people just think, I need £1 million for retirement and I'll just get there in the end through bits and bobs and things like that. But £1 million now isn't going to be £1 million in 5 years' time, let alone 20 years' time, 16 years' time, 12 years' time. And it's trying to paint that picture and actually show a client in real terms what inflation is, and actually let them paint the picture and go, God, yeah, $50,000 per annum now sounds like a lot of money, but my God, it's a hell of a lot of money when we calculate what it's going to be worth in X amount of years' time. And that's what you've got to get around as well. Because like I said, yes, you've got all these tools where you can send this to clients and do things like that, but clients will look at that and go, well, that just looks like a random number, Dan. When you do this calculation with them, and they're actually thinking in real terms, okay, yeah, I can think of that, that maybe that's not incorporating trips back, if they're in America, flying to Dubai to see us, 3 times a year when they're on holiday and things like that. And it just sort of gets them thinking that, maybe we shouldn't try and skim this off. Maybe we should try and save as much as we can that we can afford to get this done and dusted, to start this off. Because the quicker they start this off, the better it'll be. And one question I've had before from clients is, okay, well, what happens if we save this and they get to 18 and they don't want to go to university? Well, guess what, Mr. Client? When this matures, it's a lump sum. Whether you choose to give that to your child to buy their first property, maybe, if they didn't want to go to university, or maybe they get a full scholarship and they don't need that money, you've got them full choice that this can either be added to your portfolio if they don't need it to help your retirement, or if you want to give your kids a helping hand, there's a deposit for their first house. For people that are from the UK, house prices in the UK are only going one way. There's no way that now a new person coming out of university, especially with debt as well, can afford a deposit for a house in the UK now. And there's no parents previously that have even thought about doing something like this to make sure that their kids have got enough, not just for education, but even if they don't need the full amount, they've got some left over to be able to give them a kickstart in life as well, maybe buy a house, or if they've got a family, then help set that family up as well. So education plan is a bit different to retirement plan. Yes, the calculations are the same. We still work out the calculations for the years of retirement instead of years to university. But you can really paint a picture with, obviously, education planning and get to the stage where they come out of the meeting and they're actually thinking, well, God, we should have started this 2 or 3. Maybe we should have started this before John was born. And I've actually got some now where literally I've done 2 savings plans and people go, right, we're going to have a baby in 2 or 3 years' time. We want to get something set up now. Even if it's not for education planning and we don't have a child, we want to get something set up so we're not, trying to chase our tails when the child gets to, 6 or 7 or 8 or things like that. And for me, I do quite a lot of education planning, and most meetings I go into are not booked because of education. Not many people book a meeting for education, because until you do that figure, all they're thinking is, I've got to pay the school fees at the moment, let alone the school fees in 10, 15 years' time. So like I said, the main thing is when you go for a fact find, don't just go, right, kids, yeah, 7, 10, name, okay, do you have enough money? No, okay, brilliant, skip. Just always think, okay, have you thought about education planning? Most people have, but has anyone ever showed you a simple calculation of how much roughly John or Sophie's going to need to go to university? No, they haven't. No, I'm guessing it's going to be expensive. Well, let me show you, because guess what? There's the way you can do it if you just leave it to the last minute, or now you can start actually making this number a lot more achievable just by chipping away on a monthly basis as well. Any questions? Has everyone got one of these? No?
No, it would be great to have one.
Yeah.
I saw one in training that I did in November, but I haven't seen one since.
I'll speak to, if you just let me know how many you need, I'll get, you've got them in your, because I think Claire printed loads off, didn't you?
Got in the cupboard.
There you go. Yeah, and if you boys want to go around with Faith after and grab 2 out as well, because like I said, one side just shows, the compound interest. So usually when you do in retirement, you do it at 3%, just normal inflation. For education, I always do 5%, and I've never used 7, 8, 10 and 5. It used to be, depending on what country you was dealing with people going back to. So for example, if you've had clients in Egypt or Lebanon, obviously inflation there is a lot higher than it is in the likes of Europe and places like that. So you'd usually use in different tables. And in this one, you'd never really use the left one, because that's for lump sum. People just want to put a lump sum in and see how it is. Most people on a regular basis, as it says there, this assumes that someone's paying £100 a month into a plan, and then it's got it growing at 5, 8. You wouldn't really use 10, you wouldn't really use 12. So if someone's lower risk, you'd use 5% and compound it that way. But most people with growth, you're looking at around 6 to 8% growth per year, and that would just show it then what they'd actually need to save on a monthly basis with inflation to get to that figure as well. This is on the shared drive, so if you go to obviously shared drive under institutions Royal London, there's a bit that says brochures. Royal London have probably, at the moment, it used to be Zurich were one of the best. Royal London now are actually really good, like I said, from a regular savings point of view. And Hansard, I think, have also got a similar education thing on there as well. But it's always good just to have in your briefcase or your bag when you go in to see clients, because that way then, as well as them forgetting this number, leaving this with them when they're having a coffee or they're eating their dinner after, they're like, oh yeah, that's the numbers Dan spoke about. You know what I mean? It's not from you, it's from an actual Royal London 360. And then guess what? When you send through the proposal and it's Royal London 360, they recognise the name because you've sent this already, and they know it's an education plan as well. So, like I said, most of education planning, yes, it can be done on a board and it can be done in front of a client, but it is about asking the question. And like you said, you know, most people you speak to in our office, when they put deals up, what's that? It's a regular savings plan. You know, what's that for? Oh, for retirement. No one ever goes, it's an education plan. And it is one of, you know, I think I did probably 5 or 6 education plans last year that all 5 and 6 of their meetings weren't booked for education plan meetings. So it's just another way, like I said, your job as advisors, especially when you first start, is to do as many deals as possible, but it's to get as many yeses as possible. And like I said, when you go through that fact find, if you're only going through and looking for one thing, I'm right, he needs his pension, I'm just going to look at his pension, or she just wants life insurance, I'm just going to look at her life insurance, and you get to the end and you send them all the stuff and you spend time going through it and they go no, they've got less chance of saying no if you send them the life insurance, the education plan, maybe something else, because then no one's going to say to you, thanks for doing that meeting, Dan, really appreciate it. I can't afford all 4 at the moment, but can we just focus on this at the moment? Yeah, brilliant. Then you'll get 1 out of 4. And then guess what? Once they're a client and you start seeing them every quarter, so many of my clients, we started off with 1 product, now they've got 3 or 4 products. Where over the years, you build trust with them, they get a better job, they get a pay rise, and all of a sudden they're like, you know, Dan, we spoke about that life insurance we didn't do before. Well, yeah, well, can we do it now? Well, yeah, we can, of course we can. So it's silly little things like that, because like I said, the quicker you guys and girls get clients on, regardless of whether they can save the full amount or they start on at $500 a month, it's a client. It's someone you can then go back to every quarter and work with and get referrals from and do other products with and actually service as an advisor and look after. That will obviously make your, you know, the difference between you doing potentially £50,000 a year to £100,000 a year. Because the average deal size for an education plan is pretty the same as doing a regular savings plan for retirement. But you've got a lot better chance of closing one of these and using a bit of disturbing around the children than you ever trying to convince a client why they should retire at 65 when they think they can retire at 55. You know, this number's never going to change. You know, university, they're always going to go to university at 18. You know, the difference is, are they going to be able to afford to go to university, or are they going to have to take a loan out to go to university, or do you want to be in a position where you can pay for your children to go to university without having the worries of them leaving at 22 and being in debt, Mr. Client? Most clients won't want their kids to be in debt. Either they were in, you know, depending on where they come from, they were either in debt, and so many people are still servicing their student loans over here years and years after coming out of, you know, university. So they know the pressure it's been put under them paying back X amount per month, that they want to be in a position where they can help their kids out, either 100% or at least try and get as close to this number as possible to give them the best chance in life, really, you know. Is that all right?
Perfect.
Yeah? Anyone not understand any of the calculations at all? Does everyone get the calculations, yeah?
It's clear enough.
So we only need 4. So, Faith, is there enough of these in your room, yeah?
They should be, yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Would you be able to get an extra 2 for these 2 lads as well? Yeah, is that all right?
Cheers. Thank you.
But like I said, if you need anything or you have any questions because you didn't want to ask in here,